lovingness that comes through, and sometimes they can't believe the magic that comes through just from a name.
Yeah, and I think that's actually goes to the core. If it's sort of opera singers, I was reflecting that we we'll go and watch you and listen to you because you do have that something that we don't get in normal everyday life, especially in the sort of English-speaking countries. We tend to be fairly matter-of-fact. We sort of play certain roles, but when we go and listen to opera or to singers, I think we go there for a completely different connection, don't we? So
it's heart music. The operatic voice, opera is heart music. People want to have that experience of life being larger and more dramatic and just a bigger meaning, and there is an extraordinary experience actually to hold that much sound in your body. And I'm not big. I'm just sort of, a relatively small person. And so you train your body to stretch the inner surfaces and act as this pressure valve to just get more and more and more sound cutting through you. And it's very exciting. And I think everybody can learn this. And so when we listen to the voice, the raw, naked, wild voice, I think part of us knows that, I could do that too. And we feel it in our own bodies. It's almost like our own bodies respond and go, yeah, bring it.
Oh, this is real, isn't it?
Bring it on, babe.
Get on. So when did you first discover, learn not to how to tame, but untame and bring that pressure down and that attention and sort of nurture that sound down in the belly, which I understand is what opera singers can do.
Yeah, I used to sing to the flowers for hours when I was a little child. And I used to make up songs to the flowers and the fairies and the unicorns, and I was really sincere about giving them songs and writing the perfect song for them. And then when I went to school, this was high school, and everyone was auditioning for the choir, and I thought, I'll audition for the choir too. And so I fronted up and I sang a few notes, and we had this beautiful Russian music teacher who said, darling, you come be in the madrigal, come, you sing. She was fantastic. She was so expressive and so sort of slightly batty. But we loved and adored her. And so it was like I started singing because other people told me I was good at it. And I couldn't feel that until I started actually singing in front of audiences. And I started to feel what happened to an audience when you sang a note in a certain way, and how everything would go very, very quiet. And it was almost like I could feel the exchange of the people's hearts open. I've always been quite energetically sensitive, and I could feel people's bodies shifting and their hearts opening, and just them coming into flow again with, I guess, all the burdens that they had that were just left behind. So I started to be aware when I was in front of an audience that there was some sort of magic there. And from that point on, I really, I guess, kept seeking it in all the different forms that it might take with the voice. And that's speaking, inspiring. It doesn't always have to be opera singing. I've done lots and lots of different kinds of, done kids shows and music theatre. And I spent 10 years with a corporate act, and we travelled the world, and I speak, and I'm a sound healer. I trained for years as an intuitive sound healer, and that's pretty much what I mostly do now. But that power in the belly, your power doesn't come from here. It comes from the big belly. I'm going to stand up and show you. The big belly muscles are like, ha, hey, ho, hey, rrr, rrr. That belly, whoo. You need to belly under there and your whole body under the sound. And I think that's what's quite fun for people, is they know that the body is in there and your whole being is committed to just singing this note or singing an aria or singing a soundscape, whatever it is.
Pretty much like Eckhart Tolle, it really brings you into the present of now.
Yes.
Partner is a different person when he's listening to music and connecting with people's voices. It can actually hold him in the now, which is often not an easy thing to do. And I was just really interested about what you about the different roles that you have to then perform as an opera actor. You have to play different roles. Did you have any sort of most favorite and least favorite roles that you played over time?
Definitely. Is that a dog?
It's a frog.
I've got a
frog.
Frog
and dog time. There's at midnight, apparently they call frog and dog time. The dogs bark at midnight and the frogs croak at midnight. All right, favorite roles. Puccini. I'm a romantic. I love that. Just that romantic, expansive feeling. And I don't know. It's he's very conscious of the female. The story of the. A friend of mine used to say, I'm sure Puccini must have been a really great lover because he really knows how to write music for women. And, he had this feeling for the feminine torment, the feminine passion, the feminine light, the feminine beauty. And so, I love Puccini in that regard. A real sort of sense of what it is to be a woman, especially a woman in love. Give me a bit of La Boheme or Tosca every day.
Yes, the feminine torment. Let's talk about that, because obviously what you do is you basically support women in empowering them and finding their own voice and speaking out. So let's talk about the feminine torment. What do you mean by that?
I think that women's voices, approximately 3,000 years ago, women were progressively banished from positions of visible and audible authority. So women's voices were silenced from those places of leadership and guiding. Like the oracle used to be the most powerful voice in the world. And so women's voices were subdued and they were narrowed. And this is 3,000 years of sort of cellular imprisonment of the female voice, quite literally, and shaming and guilt tripping and, putting her in, I guess, the chains of fear. And so I find that the women I work with, I work with business women entrepreneurs who are trying to create a business based on their persona and their personality and their gifts and their experiences. And so most of them have a big challenge with stepping up with the voice that expresses authority. And I don't mean a dominating voice. I mean a voice that simply says, I am here. Look at me. I am visible. You're allowed to see me. I'm allowed to be seen. I'm allowed to be heard, and I'm allowed to be valued. And I'm allowed to be loved when my voice rings forth. So women seem to have, we've got a big healing journey with our voice, to reclaim the voice, to bring the light of enthusiasm back to our voice, to bring a permission to speak without being invited, simply to speak because we know something or we feel something. And I find that my operatic training has made me very comfortable with visibility on stage. I've sung for thousands and thousands of people in 40 different countries all over the world. But it really changed when I had to step up, not as a character, but as me, Dominique, and say, well, this is what I believe in, Dominique believes in, this is what Dominique has to say, this is what Dominique thinks, and this is the gifts, these are the gifts that Dominique has. And it was really challenging. And I was very aware of, so I had all the skill sets and I started to apply them to me personally. And I just took other women on that journey with me. And I've been taking other women on that journey with me for a long time now, and helping them create their signature programs, their signature speeches, their signature businesses, and particularly women who are intuitive, because that voice is very frightened. The voice, you know, like to dare to say, well, I just feel it. I don't have a logical fact, you know, arsenal to back it up with. I just feel.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was just watching The Crown yesterday, and Prince Philip's mother herself, you know, this is one of the monarchy was actually, apparently, if the sitcoms to believed, you know, she was, locked up for hysteria.
Yes. Well, you know, the hysteria, of course, was meant to be, I think it was quite recently that it was in the 50s or even 60s that, you know, and women, I'm sure, are still locked up for hysteria. And, you know, it comes, the word origin is the same as the womb. You know, women are mad because they have wombs. It drives them mad. It makes them mad. They're they're emotional. They're unpredictable. And we somehow and sometimes forget that life exists because of change. If there was no change, if everything was static, then there would be no life on Earth. We'd all be talking like this all the time. We wouldn't exist. We wouldn't grow. Nothing would ever happen. We'd all be quiet, like really exciting, wouldn't it? And we'd all really just turn into robots. And so this unpredictability, this hysteria that is really the ability to respond to something new and to open and receive and gestate something new and create something new was very feared, I think.
Yeah, and you can see that from the view of the institutions, you know, if you're thinking numbers, you know, 2, 4, 6, 8, which are the sort of the structural numbers, versus 1, 3, 5, 7, which are the feminine numbers. That, of course, the institutions would then could feel threatened. But on the other hand, you know, even in organizational behavior systems, everybody's learning that no organization can survive if it just goes stagnant. There's got to be this renewal all the time. And it's just wonderful that we can be speaking like this, because
I know we wouldn't have been able to 100 years ago. This conversation, this dialogue would not exist.
Yeah, and but you know, men have also helped us. You know, the term emotional intelligence has, you know, been a lot of men and women have contributed to that and researched that and looked into it. And you know, we've had a lot of men on the show as well who are embracing their heart and their feelings, their emotional bodies. Some of Jeff's friends.
Yeah, and when I talk about masculine and feminine, I work with this idea of polarity rather than men and women. It's simply that, you know, some of us have incarnated into a female body and we have a stronger experience of the feminine polarity, and some of us have incarnated into a male body. We have a stronger experience perhaps of the masculine identity, but I honestly believe we have both within us. I think there's a real, it's as imprisoning for men as it is for women, really, to talk about men do this and women do that.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Jeff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeff?
Does it make sense to you?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I'm a mere male being allowed to enter into the female locker room here in this conversation.
I know. Welcome in. The thing is that we love you. This is the thing that a lot of men don't realize, how much women love them. You know, like how much they adore them, and they're really excited when a man lets them be who they are. Yeah. So it's
yeah, you're being the perfect man. But,
no, yeah. I don't know. So I have two boys, and they're both very loud, and they're both very testosterone-y. And, it's like we're all kind of loud. And their dad was loud too. He was another opera singer. So, yeah, we have quite a balance of expressed voices in different ways.
And your grandmother was quite loud as well, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was amazing. She was amazing. For those of you who may not know, my grandma was Sheila Florence, who played Lizzie on Prisoner. The show. I think is it Cell Block H in America or the UK?
I just looked her up because my friend that I was driving here with, she said, "Oh, she was what was it? She was the smoking drug taking prisoner."
Yeah. She smoked, and my grandma did chain smoke, and she died of smoking. But she was she was larger than life. She was one of these very small, diminutive women who had this huge personality, and she was always a brilliant character actor. And she used to play on the stage for most of her life. And then she got this role in Prisoner as, was it the sheep shearer's poisoner? And she was very well spoken. Oh, darling, she had this beautiful English voice that she used to cultivate and hold sway with these huge parties at her house. And then of course, as Lizzie, she was, I'm a dicky ticker. She was like, she was really kind of so ochre. So she was a beautiful character actor and much loved, and interesting to have a really strong grandmother role model. I actually had two very strong grandmother role models. My other grandmother was the queen of her home, so the queen of the garden, and she would host huge Christmas parties for, like 25 people all around tables put together in her lounge room, and cook for 25 people on two little hot plates. And yeah, there's Lizzie. Yeah. Okay, there. So she, interesting when someone has that authority and doesn't become invisible when they age as a woman. So she was full of life and at the peak of her kind of strength, really, in her crone years, in her older years. And so I think that was a really amazing role model for me, that she just didn't have to apologize for getting older. She actually loved it and embraced it and thrived on it, and entered into the wisdom of it.
It touches a chord, because I know that a lot of people find that or they perceive that they're less relevant, once they're out of jobs, or they're sort of, not part of the mainstream society, and they do struggle with that. And there is, certainly compared to Asia, I think often it seems to me that the way older people get treated here is as if they're invisible, or with COVID even, and we might as well talk about it, that there's, I do notice that sometimes there's comments from the younger generation saying, oh, well, they're all going to die off and we'll take over. So there can be a bit of a divide, and there is.
There is, and
purpose, which obviously for women, also comes with menopause. Not having, but that can also be part of a cycle where we actually have more spiritual energy in the traditional role, or in the English role, we just go batty and eccentric and really funny.
See, I'm English too, Julia. So eccentricity is not, it's funny, eccentricity is absolutely fine. And I feel quite fortunate in that, because when I came to Australia, of course, if you were eccentric, you were terrified. And you weren't allowed to be eccentric. And I suspect that many, many, many people in the world are very eccentric, but they are trying very hard not to be. And I think if we all really enjoyed our eccentricity, then the world would be quite entertaining. But yeah, I heard recently that women.
Welcome everybody to sharing.
Was that me?
Who else?
Okay, I think we're just getting the video.
No, I clicked it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, women over 55 are the fastest growing group of homeless people in Australia. Women 55 and over are apparently the fastest growing homeless demographic at the moment in Australia. That's what someone said to me recently. So we can check that, like fact check. But yeah, my grandmother showed me that we don't have to lose our passion or our expression just because we're 70 or 75 or 80. And another woman who really showed me this actually was Rupert Murdoch's mother, Dame Elizabeth Murdoch. And she was the patron of the Song Room, which was a charity that I was part of the beginning of with my boss, Tanya de Jong, who created the Song Room. And when I was with this corporate act, Potpourri, so I wrote shows for the Song Room and we did kids shows all over the world. And Dame Elizabeth Murdoch used to come to our shows a lot of the time, with 800 kids all cheering and up on the stage. And she was in her 90s and she was strong and fierce and passionate and so in her body, which I found really interesting. She was a woman who really knew how to be in her body and speak her truth. It was so interesting to listen to her. So I've had these experiences with powerful men and powerful women and listened to the way that they use their voices to give back, to, drive an agenda, to contribute, to open up people's thinking, to create new ground. And I just feel very fortunate that I've watched this from a very young age because my father was a theatre director. So I used to crawl around in the seats at the auditorium in the dark and listen to these actors and just them going over and over and over and over, rehearsing and practicing and just feeling them, what it took for someone to grow their voice and to grow their confidence with their voice. Like I watched that process from a very young age. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's an unfolding of the self as well as an unfolding of your voice. And I feel quite lucky that I got to see that.
It's true. I mean, they say that the sword can change the course of society, but equally the pen, but then the spoken word, the actual. Jeff, you made the reference to Winston Churchill, but I mean, I think here in Australia, the one prime minister, ex-prime minister that I hear a lot of people talk really positively about when they met him is Bob Hawke. Seemed to have had this gift of making a lasting impression on anybody, and it didn't matter whether you were a waitress in a motel, he would still remember your name, or whether you were, one of the party sponsors. And you must have been in contact with him as well.
Yeah, I was the soloist. I was the singer at Bob and Blanche's wedding. So I don't out of all the singers in the world. And they used to come and look at potpourri. We sang as with potpourri, this corporate act. We sang at a lot of high profile events. And so I just remember one in particular before they actually asked me to sing at their wedding. I was singing and they were right up the front standing, and they were obviously so in love. They were so cute together, honestly. They were just like adoring little couple. It was very sweet. And they were there with their glasses, and they just looked so happy. And I sang a song to them in that corporate event. And I think it must have touched their hearts because, they then invited me. But what was interesting about them, and this is, we know that Bob Hawke was notorious for sort of chugging beer, but they were actually quite spiritual. There was a hidden side to them, and their wedding was very sacred. And I think that is also probably why they chose me, because right from that, how I told you I was singing to fairies and things when I was little, I always had this feeling that there was light singing through me. I was being sung through as well, and there was something that was being gifted to people's hearts when I sang. And I have a feeling that, they felt that. And it's one of those things that you can't explain it, you can't grab it. It's like water. You can't grasp water, but we feel it. We feel the potency of it.
You're saying, and but I think what is missing out of that you're obviously is that you also have to commit to being a channel for that light to flow through them. You have to join the intent to be for that, and obviously you've chosen to do that.
I chose that very early on.
You chose that early on. When was the realization or the decision? Do you remember?
Yep, I was in Ireland, and I was 19, and I was hitchhiking with a friend around Ireland, and we had a guitar and a violin with us. And because we had the instruments, we just got picked up by, people and taken to sessions and taken to festival. We had the best time. And everywhere we went, everybody, whether they were 80 or 4 years old, they had something to give. Whether it was playing the spoons or a poem or a story or a song, it was like this artistry, and they always talked about, oh yes, it's the magic. They totally believed that when they offered their voice, that they were magical. When they offered their voice in artistry, they were magical. And there was something about it that just made me go, that's it. That's the kind of artist I want to be. I want to be someone who stands on a stage and is pure magic and transforms everybody, like lifts everybody. And so it was very early on that it was like, that's the kind of artist I want to be. And it ended up with sound healing. So it took me on that big sort of career journey, and then really with working with sound healing. So all my courses and programs now, I do guided meditations, and I take people into the magic so they feel what it is like to be a musical being without necessarily having to be a singer, but they can feel how the magic of music and sound works inside them to transform them.
I tell you what, I'm sitting here looking at you, and I thought, you remind me of someone,
Yeah. Who?
Oh, hang on a sec. I just put it,
I'm going to wonder who this is going to be now.
It's me,
I was thinking of the Elf Queen. There we go.
Mr. Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom.
Yeah,
there you go.
In Lord of the Rings, he came out. He looked really stunning, didn't he? That long blonde hair, and you've got the same features of the elf kingdom in it. So when you're talking about singing to the fairies, I was thinking, yeah, there is something there. Look at this. I've seen that face before somewhere, and then I realised it was Orlando Bloom.
I was thinking Elf Queen as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Galadriel.
Yeah.
I always think this is my Viking stuff going on. I have Viking heritage, and my surname Oyston means, well, my dad always used to say that means stone eye. We were Viking and seafarers, and whether it was just the dramatic in him, I don't know. But I really identify with that North
get my mind around that. How does the stone eye work, though? It's like
Freya.
An eye made of stone, or when you look at someone, they turn into stone, or what? What is that?
Stone. I think it's to do with that, the ability to, let's be imaginative. It's the ability to see into stone. Okay, so you're so clairvoyant, you can see into the fabric of the universe, you can see into the stones, and the voice of the stones, and the voice of the birds, and the voice of the trees and plant. Let's go there.
Yeah.
Have you heard that Michael been singing all through this interview?
It's true. That's pretty unusual. So you have your friends from the forest. I mean, this is almost like a Walt Disney scene. Really cool. And you know, this radio station is actually in suburbia, so it is pretty unusual. It's not like we're
I've got
in
a bush there.
rainforest.
Got 10,000 acres over there, Daisy Hill State Forest. There's 280 acres of Springwood Conservation Park.
Yeah, but they've crossed the road to get to here to listen to Dominique talk.
Yeah, better get kangaroos. And
I can't hear it. I can't hear it.
No, okay. We've had birds. We've had frogs. We've had a lot of things at the window.
Yeah, it's good. Hey, okay, let's take this magical journey now into the spiritual realm, because I was really fascinated with that subject. And I'm sorry I broke your train of thought there to bring out your male counterpart, your twin flame there, Orlando Bloom, Lord of the Rings.
I don't mind him being my twin flame. That's all right.
Okay. This spiritual journey sounds like there's a deep awakening there, and of course, moving into character on the stage, obviously you have to drop away all the facade of who you are to take on the role that Puccini's asking you to play. And of course, you build up this whole characteristics of all these different role plays, and now you've become the mother, and you're making your journey to become the crone. So, but in that journey there, you've almost like in the story of the tarot, where you've gone from the Temperance card, and now you're moving into becoming the Empress. And so, what's led you to actually then realize that your voice was your healing tool?
Honestly, audiences. It's like I've done thousands and thousands of performances in all genres all over the world, and every single time there would be someone who came up to me and said, "What did you do to me?" or in tears, and said, or every single time. And so when I was younger, I was incredibly self-critical, like just vicious towards myself. And after a while, I just sort of, it's like, okay, my stuff and my personal kind of self-criticism journey has nothing to do with the light that is coming through, and that there is something happening that is healing for people. So it was just audiences, really. And it took me a long time to surrender to that. And I was sort of secretly studying to be a yoga teacher, and then a Steiner teacher, and then an Ayurveda practitioner, and then a, what's that beautiful color, or a Soma practitioner. And so I studied all these healing modalities, and I love healing plants, but it was always very sort of secret in the background. You could never talk about that. And it wasn't until I created a business, that I decided to create a business, that I started to, like, I started off with Get TED Talk Ready, you know, a confident woman speaker, and very much in the practical realm. And then the sort of the light worker's voice, and the priestess voice, and the elemental goddess voice these programs started to come through me. And as I said, I'm very creative, and I'm very intuitive, and they started coming together until I suppose I allowed myself to be who I am. So it's very much that journey of, we talked about visibility, you know, it takes time to actually dare to show up as you really are, when, you know, you've had a conventional career and then you've got this whole other side of you that's just going around in circles. And so business seems to be a place, entrepreneurship seems to be a place where we can bring these sides of us together. And all the women I work with have some sort of magic, intuitive abilities that they're trying to make sense of in relation to their professional skills. And so my work is to help them blend that, because that's what I've learned to do. And I have those performance skills, so I can support them with those and say, you're allowed to be exactly who you are. Because my personal opinion is that we've all incarnated for a particular purpose, and that purpose is the only thing that really fulfills us. You know, we can have all the things, all the stuff, and that's all beautiful and wonderful. And of course, we love that. But if we are not pursuing our purpose, then I really believe that we're unfulfilled. We can, you know, Tony Robbins talks about the science of achievement, that people are good at achievement, but they're not so good at fulfillment. And I think that's because this spiritual element, that this is a need in us that many of us are not knowing how to fulfill, or are not daring to fulfill. And that's where we find our fulfillment, is with this purpose. And it's spiritual. We have spiritual purposes, even if they're very practical. So yeah, that's my reality. That's my experience. And the people I work with are all longing to bring those sides of themselves together to make, you know, those two halves to make a whole, because they feel separated and they're very confused because of it.
I was listening to what you had to say there, and it reminded me of a guy called Lindsay Hart, who was one side, he assisted in designing our new Parliament House. Then he came to Queensland and he got a job with Main Roads Department of Transport, and his job was to unblock major arteries. So when the roads were all getting clogged up, so he had to come in and design a whole new system, which included roundabouts and coming off freeways and really opening it up. And so he had the camber of the road. But as a spiritual healer, you can see the similarity, because he goes in there and he works on the actual arteries in your body and the veins and the capillaries, which is just like the road structure system. And then he works on the lymphatic, which roads with the camber and the water runs off it. He has to put all the lighting in there, so he's working with the neuron systems and the central nervous systems. And so I'm seeing his parallel of being in the etheric world, working on patients, clearing out their systems, and yet manifesting in the physical. And I've heard you say your father was a director. You got your grandmother who's in the cell block H. Yeah, and then you've seen yourself step up, you know, and you got the Russian woman. You got the voice. You got the voice. You know, so this whole thing of it mirrors what's actually physically taking place is actually etherically taking place. I can see you stepping forth as a director that your father was, and saying, right, here's your script, right? Forget the one that you've been indoctrinated with through peer pressure. Boom. Yeah. And I want you to get on that stage and play it. And the stage is life itself. And I sense that's your strength and your characteristics to push this through. I really honestly think that.
You're 100% right. It's like I sometimes feel like R2D2, you know, when he plugs into the Death Star and downloads the blueprint. Yeah. I literally, sometimes when I'm coaching people, I feel I can literally see this entire blueprint of, you know, the new script, as you say, and it's like these words just pour out of me, and yeah, this deep seeing into the potential of someone. I love that, because it's like creating a character. You know, you have this freedom to see into, why does this person say what they say? Why do they do what they do? What can I draw out and bring life to? And yeah, as you say, life is our stage. And these women that I tend to work with, women, they want their lives to be epic, not necessarily overbearing, but meaningful and like a stage, and like they are that shining light, and they have that experience of, this is my realm, this is my path, this is my service, this is my devotion, this is my essence, and I get to be me fully. Yeah, so totally. I love that. That's one of my favorite things to do. Is to set people on fire and to say, yes, you get to be you. And your voice is this channel for divine creating and divine manifesting.
You know, the Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
Okay, and they had the card. Yeah. I can see you, I mean, as a result of this conversation, you could get the tarot pack and you could go to the woman, any woman, and say, right, we've got 4 different suits. Choose a suit: cups, swords, wands. What's the other one?
I don't know.
Oh, pentacles. Okay. Take a card out of any one of those suits, and you play the role of being the ace, play the role of first, second, third, fourth, right up to the queen. Yeah, and even become the king. That'd be interesting to see, because that's a script in itself.
Mm.
Yeah, and those girls would certainly learn the craft of what each one of those aspects of that particular 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way through. You know, it's quite an interesting story of life itself.
I guess it's
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, it sounds like what you're talking about is initiation too, because I really believe that, you know, our purpose is the means by which we are initiated into more of our power, and it's not and so we change and we grow and we take the next step of becoming more, and then the next step of becoming more, and the next step of deepening, and the next step of like owning a new piece of our potential and unlocking that. And so very much the tarot, I think the tarot, didn't it initiate with the Albigensians, and they were holding the feminine mysteries. See, the feminine mysteries went into all sorts of unexpected places. I think the feminine mysteries, because they weren't allowed to be in the outer realm, I think they went into places like the tarot and, of course, fairy tales and the hidden place where they were hidden. And of course, my understanding, according to Robert Graves, who talks about the 5 mysteries of the goddess, and the second mystery is initiation. So we have birth, initiation, love or sacred union, rest and healing, and death. And these 5 mysteries of the goddess are all in the tarot, like beautifully through the tarot, how we are being, it's really a book of initiation, I think. It's a book of birth and death and initiation and healing and love, those 5 mysteries. Yeah, I think the tarot is quite magical. Is that what, do you work with the tarot?
No, just picking up on what you essentially got.
Yeah, there's so many systems, aren't there, that we can tap into, but I have a tendency to tap into the person themselves, and it's almost like they are their own blueprint, they are their own system within themselves. So everything, everything's in them, and it's just a matter of waking up to who they are. You know, that's my journey.
You've been on the stage, you know. Doesn't matter what language the people on the stage, on the audience, you've been able to cut across that language and resonate with people. And so you're not frightened.
No.
Speak up. I mean, I remember going to school, and part of the thing was you had to speak up in front of the audience. And the teacher would say, look at the end of the hall and look at the clock and just focus on the whole clock. Don't look at the people. Well, no. You look at the people, you make eye contact, you engage with the people. But public speaking is quite an issue for a lot of people. I honestly see you as a great vehicle for both female and males coming together. I can see you doing couples.
Yeah, I really wanted to do that with my ex-partner, and he had a magnificent voice and a magnificent feeling for how the human being longs to express themselves. And it hasn't worked out that way, but I think it'll come through in my work, at some point. So it's almost like I had to start with the feminine because I didn't understand the feminine, because I was raised in that almost like a son, like achieve, do, and out there, and extrovert. Like, I'm very introverted, but I've learned to extrovert. And as you say, I'm not scared anymore, but I was scared. I was terrified. And so I understand how deeply terrifying it is to open the doors to who you are and be that vulnerable and be seen for, your true essence, the things we usually mask.
And on that note, as a coach, as a voice coach, we often say we can be our own worst enemies. What do you find that most people struggle with in terms of blocking their freedom of expression?
Shame and fear. Shame, absolutely. Shame is the most silent of all the voices. Shame is, fear is very noisy as a voice. Fear says, don't get that, whoa, like you think of all the fear sounds that people have. Whoa, like that's a fear sound. Fear is noisy. Shame is just, it's silent.
It shuts the door.
And shame really sits in the solar plexus. And this, which is right over your personality, your personal power. And we close in on our personality, and because we're ashamed. So many people are so ashamed of who they are, some part of who they are. And they're silent because of it. So I would say, as much as, like, we all know fear is a great contractor of the self, but a lot of people don't quite recognize that shame silences the voice incredibly. And then that non-permission, I'm not allowed to be me. I'm supposed to be something else. That's a really big one too.
Know who they are,
it's just pressure.
Yeah, it is, but it's, I guess, for me, thinking about myself, and I've played so many different roles, obviously even growing up, play a certain role depending on what order you were born in, whether you're the first child or the second, you just adopt that. And then, you go off to work and you try and fit in either into the bank or the accounting company, or later, I teamed up with a bunch of detectives and policemen. So, and then, I come out to Australia and I sort of have to sort of try and fit in and understand sort of your funny sense of humor here. They always say the opposite of what they mean. I think it's really funny. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes I just think I spend my whole life trying to fit in, and that if people said, be yourself, I'm going, well, I really don't know who I am. I mean, I sort of react and I respond and I give myself permission to respond. But if I had to define myself, it's interesting.
Yeah, you have to find yourself to be yourself.
Some people define themselves by the roles they play. Some people define themselves by who they're related to. Other people like Dominique and Jeff are actually lucky because they say, this is my purpose. When I met Jeff, this is the radio station, she's my mistress. That was how he introduced himself to me.
But I'm 50. It took a long time to get there.
So, how old were you when you got there, Dominique?
I'm getting there now. Starting to get that. Like, it's starting to come together now. Like, this is 3 decades of me just going, I don't understand who I am. Really. I'm trying here and trying there and listening to this person and constantly giving my power away, constantly lending my creative energy to somebody else's vision. Like, it's a big thing to be who we are.
Even the tarot, the full card is the one who's got all the knowledge and got clear clarity, and they have a choice of off the cliff. and then
Yeah.
guess what? They land on their feet. Otherwise, you take the slow journey down in life, and you get to the bottom. So just take that leap of faith. Boom, boom, everything works out.
Hey, do you want me to do a little bit of a singing sound healing thing for you?
Love that. I'm sure our
Mhm.
audience loves that as well.
All right, because we've been talking about the voice, and I thought that that would be nice to just, because human beings have a huge range. We can make animal sounds. We can make expressive sounds. Oh, we can make like high, low, talk, sing, sound, rumble. Like we have such a huge range, and like we just put our voice into these little boxes. So would you like me to do something?
Yes.
Okay, you're ready. I'm going to sing to your hearts. And let's do soothing. Something that's soothing. So for those of us who have been through a big year and a tough year, and your hearts need a little bit of nurturing, and I'm just going to imagine and do some toning sounds. So this is free toning, all right? So you can close your eyes if you want, or just relax back, make yourself comfortable, and tune into your own heart. And you can just imagine your heart as...
Carry on. Just listen to the... Don't forget we're free to air radio stations. All the people listening, we just have to be careful of people.
All right, shall I go? You tell me when to go.
You go. I've just had the...
All right, we're good. No, this is awesome, because like live performance, you just have to let everything be what it is, don't you? It's part of the delight of it. All right, so we're tuning into a heart, and I'm going to imagine your hearts are being filled with light. And so anything that is a heart wound, let it soften and be tended to. Oh, yeah. You can quite literally feel your heart softening and letting go, and almost like repositioning itself to receive love. So if your heart has been struggling to receive, just receiving and opening more and more love, and you can imagine that love is pouring into your heart. You can just embrace it. I think we're at time. Is that my understanding that we have to finish up? You can stop me anytime. No? Want me to keep going? Should we keep going?
No, it's beautiful. Thank you. I think it's wonderful, and thank you for being you and sharing your voice and the gift of light. So if people would like to connect with you, and I'm sure you've inspired many that are watching now and in the future, greetings to you. If they'd like to connect with you, Dominique, what's the best way?
On my Facebook page, Dominique Oyston, and yeah, I have a free Facebook group, which is Goddess Sound Healing Journeys. Some people really like going on these. I work a lot with, frequency and light and the goddesses, because they're the embodied feminine, qualities of the embodied feminine. So I've got my Facebook group, and I've got lots of programs. Awakening Feminine Frequency is the latest one. Yeah, so my Facebook page, PM me, message me. Oh, Persephone. All right, we've got all the codes there. Yeah, I've tuned into a lot of goddesses over the last 5 years. So they seem to be the energies and frequencies that really support women to ground their voices, to find that strength and that solidity, but in a really kind and gentle way and in an illuminating way. So
beautiful. And I think that's part of one of the other speakers we've had before, Caroline Milne, did say that the age of the feminine was starting and will be in ascendant. So if you want to be part of that and develop your inner goddess more, we welcome you to connect with Dominique Oyston. And we look forward to everyone unleashing the truth of their voice and following their dream. Thank you very much. You've been listening to Dreaming the New Dream, Jeffrey Shaw and Dominique Oyston.
thank you.
Yeah, she's really good.
Not as good as you are, Jeff. You close it off properly.
Oh my goodness, fantastic. Hey, have you back again next year, eh? And just see how we go with some of these projects.
That'd be great. That'd be so fun. Oh, look, I mean, yeah, it's like we can go in so many different directions, can't we, with this? Yeah, it's really fun. Thank you both. It's been absolutely a delight.
Thank you very much.
And are we still recording?